From a radio studio on Long Island, New York, come two die-hard fans of the greatest rock and roll band hailing from Hollywood, California. Dissecting all things Guns N' Roses and anything else in their distorted minds, it's Brando and Scotto.
'Cause you know what the fuck you are!
And this is Appetite for Distortion.
Try it again!
And welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion. My name is Brando. With me, as always, is my partner in perfect crime, Ian, Scotto. No, I got that backwards. Scotto, Ian.
Whichever. Ian Scotto here, but it's Brando and Scotto because it sounds good. Dude, I'm psyched for this episode. You and I have actually talked about, or me specifically, have said we got to get Stevie Rachelle from Tuff, from Metal Sludge on the podcast. And every week something came up. He was doing a show. He's a busy man, but this week we have him, and I'm fucking psyched.
He's like the Matt Damon to Jimmy Kimmel. Like, oh, sorry, we couldn't get you on this week. But I actually, and I'll tell him I wasn't that familiar. I'm familiar with his work on Metal Sludge, and you laughed because I'm like, oh, is that the website where they talk about all the rock stars' penis sizes? And that's what I know. I guess that's why it became famous back in the day. I don't know. I know you followed it for a while, and you know it for the proper internet magazine that it is.
It's a few things.
It's more than that, but that's just because I have apparently a lot of therapeutic issues I still have yet to work out. That's what I remember it for. I'm like,
the way I would describe it, honestly, is it's like the TMZ for like hair bands, including hair bands that people don't give a shit about anymore. Like, if you were wondering what happened to the old lead singer of Britney Fox, like this is the only website covering it.
Old lead singer? I have no idea. So, which I think is cool because as we've established, and I really didn't think there could be a bigger hair metal fan in their young 30s than me, and I'm like an average one, but you are pretty hardcore with it. So that's why you know more, so I'm glad you reached out, so we're going to get him on in just a little bit. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that interview.
And I will say, I have nothing on James Maresca, a.k.a. at Rock Nation Radio on Twitter, so there's a plug for him. He is like the biggest hair metal fan under 30 that I know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, I was listening to some Cinderellas this morning on my Pandora.
Dude, I dig it, man. Nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't. It's just like I got to be in the mood for it.
Which reminds me, I got to ask Stevie, his opinion. Is Guns N' Roses a hair band? I'd like to hear his take on it.
Yeah, because you look at, if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, we like to take part of the Throwback Thursdays, and a lot of the throwbacks have them all with the big hair, especially Duff and Axl. I mean, Slash has always had that. I guess I don't want to call it a Jew-fro, but it's pretty. It's not an afro. It's something. It's just like a Jerry curl. He uses that Soul Glow or whatever. So yeah, they might have been a hair band to start. And also, I would like to get his definition on what a hair band is, because they don't like being called that, from what I understand. Bands of that era.
Yeah, but
there's a stigma attached.
It's a specific thing. I think a lot of bands don't embrace that type of thing, though. Like, I think a lot of bands from the early 90s wouldn't want to be called grunge. Nirvana doesn't sound like Pearl Jam, which doesn't sound like Soundgarden, which doesn't sound like Alice in Chains. Like,
some people, when you're not a fan, it does. Because remember back in the day, and I think Ricky Rackman gave Scott Weiland and SDP shit that they sounded like everybody else. And to us, they don't.
No.
But if you listen to bands that era, if you're not a big fan, you're like, this sounds like everything else. I don't know, and maybe I can parlay it into how I am with some of the younger music. I mean, they all sound the same to me, and I really try. Even like today's country, it all sounds the same to me.
Yeah, I understand that.
But so we'll talk to him about that, and also, he'll have a lot to say about Guns N' Roses, and looking forward to hearing his opinion. And speaking of the band, and I do want to mention, which we'll go into Guns N' Roses, because last night, as we're recording this, I saw ZZ Top, and it was my first concert that I've been to since seeing Guns N' Roses at MetLife, and I had much better seats. And I liked the Guns N' Roses show more, even though ZZ Top kicked ass. I mean, they are legends. Sure. The youngest is Billy Gibbons, who's 66. Both Mr. Beard, who is the only one without a beard, and Oh my God, why am I forgetting his name?
Look it up, but I do
Dusty
get
Hill. Dusty Hill.
Okay,
right.
but I think what you're saying though, because I've had this, that when you see Guns N' Roses, you're completely spoiled. Like there's no concert that compares for me.
Well, I'm not even going to that point where I'm a bigger fan of the GNR catalog and the band, where it's the GNR show, even without the slash, with the pyro and them all running around. Yes. And I mentioned the ages for a reason of ZZ Top. They're at least a decade older than the guys from GNR. It's just them just standing there, rocking, occasionally doing that.
That's always what they've done.
They'd always done that, but it was just a unique experience to see. And their only sort of ambiance they had was, like, it seemed like it went on the entire show, was the smoke machine. And that was it, just the contrast of just GNR. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's just interesting what GNR brings to the stage. But GNR now, of course, they're waiting to go to South America. They got to go to overseas.
Yep.
But right now, Axl is with AC/DC doing some shows, getting good reviews. They're going to be here in New York next week. But the big news with Guns N' Roses was that we heard from Axl and Duff.
Yep.
Like, wow. I mean, the last time, you know what? Maybe you want to kind of. And I'll get the same thing with Stevie, especially because you mentioned how like bands like Dokken, they're more successful overseas. That Axl did kind of like an interview session a few months back, if you remember, at some sort of learning annex in China.
Yeah, which was strange.
Yeah, very strange. And now
Probably a good payday.
Yeah, and then now he does an interview in what, Brazil?
I didn't see where it was, to be honest.
I think it was in Brazil. It was Fantástico Globo. Yeah, it was an interview. So it's crazy. So just to see them both there and alive and talking about the band for the first time since the reunion happened. And we'll get into a clip in a second about what we have a lot of clips that we'll hopefully get to throughout the show about what the plans are with Steven and Izzy. And let's play that clip first, and then the reaction that Izzy had via Twitter. So if you haven't heard, let's set the stage kind of sort of in real time.
Steven did join us.
Yeah. Oh, he did? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Steven that joined us. I don't, you know,
I'm sorry.
at the same time, I have no idea. I mean, it's when this started, Steven had just had back surgery and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any idea about that. And with Izzy, that's just something that I can't really describe to say. I don't really know what to say about Izzy. It's like, you know, you could have a conversation and think it's one way, and the next day it's another way. So, and I'm not trying to take any shots at Izzy. It's just, you know, his thing's kind of his thing, whatever that is.
I don't know what your interpretation of that at the time was, because I wouldn't have thought he was taking a shot. I was just like, okay, maybe he just like how he has always been. He may want to do a couple shows, maybe he doesn't. He's doing his own thing.
Yeah.
And it was really not much of anything, but that's how I interpreted it at the time.
And also the fact that we saw Izzy on stage with Axl not that long ago,
right.
you assume there's no hard feelings.
Right. And so we you know, he was on stage with Velvet, so didn't really take much out of it. And then before we get to Mr. Stevie Rachelle, we got a tweet from Izzy, who's tweeted all but I think 4 times.
The way you said it, I don't. No. It's just I wonder if people are going to interpret. He tweeted at the AFD show.
I meant we. As
it would be cool if he did.
I know the collective we. He says, "Bullshit. They didn't want to split the loot equally. Simple as that. Moving right along. ... Wow.
Yeah.
Shots fired, man. Wow."
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good segue into Stevie, because it'll be interesting to hear his take. You know, he's a guy who's running a band called Tuff that has changed their lineup a million times. They still do shows here and there, and it makes you wonder, you know, a lot of people wonder, is it a team? Is it a equal partnership? Or are certain members of that team like the LeBron James of the team and just happen to be worth more because they're the big draw? I mean, if this reunited GNR, if you want to call them reunited, was Izzy, Duff, and Axl, would the turnout be the same as a Axl, Slash, and Duff? You know, yeah. I think Slash is the big draw. that's what people are paying for. They were wondering where is Slash. I know that there's always the where is Izzy people, but I think where is Slash was the resonating thing throughout the years.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And that's our opinion. But what about them as supposed friends? So we'll see.
So joining us on the show is a guy, as I said in the intro, that I've wanted to have on for quite a few weeks, and he's just been doing so many gigs and that type of stuff, which I completely get, is Stevie Rachelle, the founder of Metal Sludge, a website I've frequented for years, the lead singer of Tuff, and so much more, man. So, first of all, it's just an honor to have you on. There's been a lot of talk about you recently, especially with like the little feuds with Bobby Blotzer and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, hey, man, thanks for having me. I've reached out and got in touch with people I know, and I've done a few of these podcasts, but I haven't done a ton. And it's a cool medium, obviously, to get your word out. Just because when you do terrestrial radio, I think that's what you call it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Usually the DJ's like, hey, man, how are you? Got a gig this weekend? Cool. Where are you at? Well, we're at the cool. Well, we'll see you there. Commercial, and then you can't even fucking say your name, and they're already cutting, your answers, 6-8 words, and they're ready to cut off and go to the next question, and next thing you know, they're into another segment. So this is a good way to kind of, for someone like me who's fucking full of hot air, I can talk a little long,
Make yourself at home, take your pants off. You're not in studio, so that's okay with us. Just relax,
Right.
and take as much time as you want. This is so funny for me because when Ian and I started the show, I mean, we've both we're around the same age, Ian and I. I just turned 33, Ian's 30. And growing up, I mean, I've always been a metal fan and a hair metal fan, and we'll get into that term, that I've always been familiar with Metal Sludge, and it's cool to talk to the founder of that. But when Ian brought to my attention, I got the guy from Metal Sludge on. It's like, is that the website that talks about how big the rock stars' dicks are? It's like, he's like, that's what you know? I mean, I don't know. I think back in the early internet days, that for some reason in my weird mentally chemical imbalanced mind, that's what I remember, and just reading the stories that it was all out there. So I know you are a lot more than that. But I think, isn't that what kind of initially got you some sort of fame? Because there's nothing else it was like TMZ of rock before anything like that existed, before the other websites like that existed.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, that's the first question, by the way. about
no, it's all good. I mean, are you asking, is it Metal Sludge that made me get quote unquote fame, or are you saying is it the penis chart that gave Metal Sludge fame?
I don't know. Is it the penis chart? I think that made the Metal Sludge a household name, because at least that.
Well, yes and no. It absolutely was one of the sections on the site or the blog or whatever you want to call it that really ended up getting a lot of attention. And I mean, when I say that, I mean it got attention to the level that sections of it were printed, in a lot of magazines,
right? Like
Rolling Stone, Playboy, Spin. I mean, around the globe, there was big publications that gave us like a 2 or 3 page feature. I mean, unheard of, especially for anything hairband related in the late '90s, early 2000s. And they talked about the site. But they obviously focused on the fact that, and it's not only a website that talks about, who's who in 80s hairband rock and roll that are all dead or balding or doing whatever, but, and when I say dead, I meant, dead in the water as far as their career was concerned. But, they also have these groupies that write in and talk about who's got a big schlong and who's, all that kind of stuff. So that absolutely was something that people were, I don't know, mesmerized by or like intrigued by, because, going back to the summer of 1998, which is when Metal Sludge was born. I mean, that's 18 years ago, it's a long time. And at that point, the internet was in its, to the majority of the world and, America, it was in its very, very infant stages.
I think you still dial up.
Had a website. Yeah, nobody had a website. Few people had emails. There was no such thing as YouTube wasn't up, Facebook, MySpace, Instagram. I mean, no other like major social networks. I think the only thing that people became familiar with at that point was they were starting to hear that you've got mail, and they were like started to learn about how Yahoo worked or whatever. So, and honestly, me and my partner at the time, Sean, we didn't know about the internet either. We just knew it was something that was happening, and we, decided to create this website and talk about this stuff that we were part of or that we loved or appreciated, but also found a little bit of an avenue to have fun with it, because it's funny. There's a couple of different ways that people perceived us. I mean, in some ways, at some point, there was people that were like, these guys hate hair bands. These guys are dicks. And it was so not true.
And also for the people not totally familiar with the site, this is before they knew it was you behind the site. They didn't know it was a guy in, a hair band that was relatively big, Tuff, in the early 90s.
Correct. And so, when we put it together, it wasn't like we just decided to do it one day and started it. Like, we kind of, for whatever it's worth, we kind of spitballed for a couple of weeks, and we made a plan. We're like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do with it. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it anonymously. We came to this realization that we were going to absolutely, I call it busting balls, talking shit, kicking people up the ass, whatever you want to call it. We were going to expose some of the farce, some of the fraud that was the hairband era. And when I say that, I mean, at one point, okay, guys are wearing hair extensions or wigs. Some guys' wigs are worse than the other guy. We're like, we're gonna unload. We're gonna make a Bosley's Hair Club for Men chart. And we're gonna list everybody that's got a hair problem. And we're gonna put it on there. And but collectively, as many people as we were taking out, I also, even though I was one of the guys, I knew that I had to include myself in that chart, because I was also one of those guys wearing a headband all the time,
And now who's completely bald.
Yeah, so, I was willing to dish it out, but also willing to take it. In other words, we'd also beat up on me.
Cool.
And, right out of the box, the one thing that we decided to do is that we were going to do it anonymously. And it was kind of like my analogy was, we were like the masked magician. Remember the magician that went on TV and told all the secrets of the magic industry?
I do.
And then at one point when that first came out, too, there was like so many different little things that took place in this magic show. And it was like here's a great one. I remember seeing this, and I remember seeing this girl on stage, and he puts her in this box, and he throws a blanket over it, and like 5 seconds later, he spins the box, and then, boom, the chick's like on the other side of the auditorium. And I was like, that's physically not possible. Like, how the fuck does he do that? And then at one point, and now this is how we did it. And all of a sudden, they re-show everything in slow motion, and then next thing you know, they open a curtain, and two chicks walk out who are identical twins. One chick's in the box, the other chick's her twin sister. I was like, oh my God, that's the dumbest thing. Like, why did nobody ever fucking think of that?
Yeah.
It's a twin. Like, nobody's going to fucking know that, So we were like, we're going to be like the masked magician. We're going to tell the secrets of the industry, which I knew a lot of stuff because I lived in LA for, since the mid-'80s, and I was friends with some of these bands and toured with them and had information I was privy to being, related to these groups and signed and whatever. But we were going to be secretive as our identity. And of course, it was so early on, the whole thing of like internet trolls or whatever they became to be known as, that term didn't even exist at that point, I don't think.
You're right.
Like, we were just two guys. We had a few other people that were kind of related, but it was mainly me and one other guy that just created this thing. And at one point we put it on the internet. And slowly but surely, it became the, original social network for this kind of, interest. Hair bands, rock bands, the 80s, MTV Headbangers Ball, Sunset Strip, that whole thing. And basically from there, it just at one point it took off like wildfire, you know. So
I guess two questions. What made you decide to do the website? Because you were also in a band, and that in itself is a career. And how come you wanted to be anonymous? Did you want to be anonymous because you just didn't want the fame from it? You just wanted to create this living, breathing website that had its own attention and not bring the attention on you? Or, as you said, there weren't trolls out there, or were you still afraid of backlash? So I guess those are the two things I
well, here's the first thing. The first thing is I can honestly admit the reason this idea popped in my head and I wanted to do it was my initial anger towards Jerry Miller, who was the editor of Metal Edge magazine. Now, you guys are only 30 and 33, so you remember Metal Edge, correct?
Yes, I do. And I will say, I also, when I remember it, it was when the bands that were big were Korn and Limp Bizkit, and your era had kind of fallen off at that point, quite honestly.
Okay, so previous to that, there was this woman who was the editor of the magazine for many years. And now I'm going to draw this analogy and equate it for younger people, but Jerry Miller was then kind of what Eddie Trunk is now. And I say that, I don't really know Eddie that well, but he's obviously a guy that has a position right now in the industry with, you know, a big radio show and a lot of followers, and he's doing a lot of these type of events where he can help a band get exposure. And so a lot of bands, in a nutshell, kiss his ass, you know, because they like, I want to be on Eddie Trunk's show, and I get it, you know. And at that point, that's what Jerry Miller was. She was the woman in the industry that if a local band in L.A. or New York or Chicago or wherever, she'd go to see Motley Crue or Poison in concert and go backstage and hang out, and then there'd be these local bands like Tuff or Tommy Gunn or Young Guns or whoever be like, oh my God, that's the lady from Metal Edge. Let's go up to her, you know. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Stevie, blah, 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 you know. And suddenly she could put you in Rock on the Rise, which was the little column that was like a page in the magazine that initially talked about Skid Row before they came out, or Warrant, or King Cobra, or whoever. And so by befriending her, you were trying to get yourself some notoriety for this magazine, which behind Circus and Hit Parader, Metal Edge at one point became like the Bible of 80s rock bands, you know? So, and I'm getting to the question, the editor herself was a huge fan, very knowledgeable of this stuff, but she was also, you know, essentially kind of a fanboy, fangirl. You know, she was not a groupie, but like a big fan of the bands, but also, you know, an intelligent older woman that, you know, could write about the bands. And she gave them a lot of praise. And at one point, it really helped those bands, without a doubt. And at one point, she really helped Tuff. She absolutely did. But there came a point, and that was from like 88 or 89 when she first put us in her Metal Edge, Rock on the Rise, hot band from L.A. coming up, to, you know, the downfall of everything. And she was still there, and I was trying to get her to talk about a solo band that a solo release I had put out. So this is 1998, a full 10 years of knowing her. And she was absolutely supportive of Tuff along the way. But I actually wanted her to do something on my solo project. And at one point, through the grapevine, with another industry-related woman, who I'll leave remain nameless at this point, she told me that Jerry said some kind of harsh things about me, or negative. And they just weren't that nice. And I, at that point, I was, you know, angry. I just went through, 4 or 5 years of being beaten over the head with grunge, and I was like, honestly, and I'm kind of ashamed looking back at this, but I honestly thought to myself, fuck you, you fucking bitch. I'm going to spend every waking minute to fucking take you out. I'm going to make fun of you. I'm going to make fun of your magazine. You know, how dare you disrespect me like that? And then that was my thought process, almost 20 years ago. I don't think that way, and I wouldn't think that way as a grown man, and probably wasn't a grown man at 32 or whatever anyway. So at that very moment, and this is truth, this is from the heart, at that very moment, Metal Sludge was born. And I was like, I'm going to create a website. That's right, because magazines are going in the shitter, and fanzines are stupid. That's like when you're 16. This new medium called web traffic or internet. We're going to build a website, and we're going to basically make fun of Metal Edge. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to make fun of everything it stands for or stood for, and we're going to call it Metal Sludge. Yeah, Sludge. We're going to sludge everybody. Like, that literally is how it came to be.
That's awesome.
You know? And I don't want to sound bitter, because I'm not. Maybe I was. But that is really how this whole thing came to be. And then, little by little, me and my friend, we talked about it, and we had no idea what a JPEG was, or a GIF, or a download, or HTML, or coding, and Sean started learning that, and I started writing little content and little ideas, and little by little, that's really how the site was born, you know. And oddly, it was probably, I don't have the exact date in my head, but I think within a year, she left Metal Edge. And Paul Gargano, who was like an assistant or a writer, he became the editor around that time. And obviously, when you were reading more about like Limp Bizkit, Power Man 5000, Korn, you know.
Yeah, that's what was big at the time, and they had to survive. I have another question before we jump into GNR, but actually just to finish Brandon's question. So why anonymous?
Well, because of the reason that we knew the content was going to be very racy and very edgy. And, you know, I was a guy in a hair band, you know, and even though the band at that point wasn't even playing, we weren't around, a lot of these bands had kind of died off. I still knew a lot of these people, you know, and so it's like we started playing with stuff. It was like Howard Sternish or Saturday Night Live, you know, like something with Britney Spears or Justin Bieber or Lady Gaga. They're modern celebrities right now. So at one point, you know, Saturday Night Live will mock them or make fun of them and have them on the show, but also they can make fun of each other and mock themselves. And so that was kind of the whole sludgy aspect, was to just, you know, punching bag people, you know, and it really wasn't mean-spirited. I mean, I think it was in a way, and some people believe that, but it was, you know, it clearly hit a nerve with a lot of people. We were saying things that everybody else thought, and every band would say in their tour bus about the other band they were playing with, but they would never say it to their face, and they wouldn't do it, you know, publicly, but we expressed an opinion that a lot of people had about a lot of bands. And I mean every band, you know, including Tuff or Nelson or Quiet Riot or Warrant or Slaughter or Skid Row and Sebastian Bach or Pretty Boy Floyd. Like, we were voicing what a lot of people thought. And obviously a lot of people at one point agreed with it or found it to be fun or hilarious, and then they started to contribute. And I think that I, as one of the guys I'm from Tuff, so I can't just go out there and go, hey, I'm going to make fun of these guys, and by the way, I'm this guy. You know, we wanted to do it anonymously, and we also knew that by doing it anonymously, it would create some kind of a mystique.
Sure. You
know, which it did. And we did that for almost, 6-7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that did create where people were like, who the fuck is this?
That's
like,
kind of badass.
People are updating their, you know, we have these, you know, this information. And here's the thing, too. After a while, it wasn't even us. We weren't even creating the sludge. The sludge was creating itself when an incident would happen. And, you know, we embraced this fact that you guys aren't old enough to remember this, but you've probably read about it. When David Lee Roth and Van Halen split, that was like 1985, 86. Nobody knew anything unless you lived in L.A. or Sherman Oaks or the Valley or something until like 5 months later when it was in Hip Trader, like Sammy Hagar's the new singer in Van Halen, and the whole world went, what? Sammy Hagar's in Van Halen? What the fuck is that? Like, at that point, that wouldn't even have been covered by CNN or any news channel. That
sure, yeah.
Like, nobody knew about it. So it took 100 days, or what's lead time on a publication?
It's funny. Like, I'm thinking of like the old times of mail when they were like rode up on horses and
the Pony Express.
Yeah, it really.
Where we are now, it's instant,
and it's so crazy that it's within our lifetime that this much has changed pretty much.
Unreal.
You said you guys are 30 and 33, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, I'm 50. When I was a kid, I ordered some skateboard wheels through a magazine from California to Wisconsin where I lived. And at that point, if you ordered anything mail order, in the little description, it would say allow 6 to 8 weeks for delivery, or 4 to 6 weeks, which is like almost 2 months. That's a long fucking time. But that was how shit used to be. When you ordered something in the mail, it would take 2 months to get to you. I mean, at this point, if somebody buys a CD on Amazon on Monday and they don't have it by Friday, they're fucking putting in a stop.
Yeah, I mean, if they even are buying the CD now, because now it's like a whole era where people don't buy CDs. I mean, which is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, we're turning off your account. Where's the fucking product, motherfucker? So what happened is, in real time, when this internet started to happen, we had this message board, we created a chat room, we had an email service, obviously, and somebody would go to, say, a Vince Neil solo show in Denver, and he'd get there and he'd play the show, and at one point, I'm just giving him, spit.
I know where this is going, yeah.
and he would get drunk and then fall down or something, and there was a show that happened somewhere.
Not Vince Neil, Stevie.
Not him.
Yeah, or with other guys, and then something bad would happen. And so what would happen is somebody would go home from the show at like 1 a.m. and send us an email and go, "Oh my God, I just saw Vince Neil at a club, at such and such in Denver. He was so drunk during Red Hot, he fell over, and like people had to carry him off the stage, and the set was cut short." And we would hear all this information within a couple hours of it happening, and then we'd report it. And sometimes there would be somebody that like, "Hey, I took a picture and here it is." And so then we would put it up, and people would be like, "Oh my God, that's insane," And now again, that was 98, 99, 2000. Now, people can be there, and we have these modern iPhones or smartphones where they can take a picture and a video and go, not send it in 2 hours, but send it in 2 seconds, as fast as they can basically record it and hit send to an email or a Facebook post or Instagram. It's instant. So we were kind of, we were on that, 16, 17 years ago in reporting all this. And then people started to realize, like, wow, we log on this morning and we found out this happened last night with, this tour, or these guys got in a fight, or this guy fucking fell off stage, and that's where it just created kind of a feeding frenzy that everybody started sending us stuff too. When something bad happened, it's like you just said earlier about TMZ. When something crazy happened related to our industry, rock and roll, heavy metal, hair band, they would go, send that to Metal Sludge. Like, as
you were ahead of the curve.
Crazy.
I completely get it, because at that time, as you're saying, kind of these magazines like Metal Edge, they're not going to report on that type of stuff. Like, they need to keep a relationship with these groups. So that kind of goes into the why can't I say the word anonymity? Anonymity. So
we'll
anyway,
edit that out, maybe.
I want to get into Guns N' Roses, but here's another question just on this whole topic, and then we'll get into current GNR stuff, because that's really what we do around here. But without being cocky about it, would you kind of give your site some credit for like a revival for these bands? Because here's the thing. Bands like Slaughter and Warrant, they're still able to tour. They play the casino circuit. These like B-list people, most people would say 80s hair bands, and they're able to make a career out of it and make a great living. And the thing is, before your site came out, as you said, Metal Edge stopped really reporting on this type of stuff and telling you where everybody was going on tour and what dates. MTV was no longer playing videos, and if they were, they weren't by these bands. So the thing is, like Metal Sludge, as much as you guys were making fun of these bands, there were people that were like, holy shit, Winger is still touring? Where? I'm there.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say we have, I wouldn't take credit for it, but I will say that at that point, like you just said, nobody was reporting on it. I mean, occasionally Metal Edge might do a feature that said in the spring, get ready for this summer's Rock Never Stops tour. It's going to be Slaughter and LA Guns and Enough's Enough, And so what we would do, we wouldn't report on Rock Never Stops. We would rename the tour that the Rock Always Sucks tour, and then it's being funny, obviously. We're trying to be funny there, saying, yeah, the Rock Always Sucks tour is coming this summer, and here's all the dates. And we'd name the bands and then say, let's hope that so-and-so's wig doesn't fall off and so-and-so doesn't, he's not too fat, or, will Janie have a mohawk again, or whatever. It was crazy at that time. Like, we were absolutely pushing and promoting it, and I think that some of those guys took it to heart and didn't like what we were doing. I remember Phil Lewis at one point from LA Guns. He said Metal Sludge does a disservice to the community, and he was kind of like he was kind of friendly to us. Then he was kind of anti-Metal Sludge, and then at one point he came back around, and I think he realized what we were doing, and I think that we absolutely were helping, because we were one of the few that would report on it, and we also were. I mean, at that point, we were getting 30, 40, 50,000 viewers a day, which, that's more Metal Edge magazines that were printed and distributed per month. So, and we were getting that every day. And the people, could get new content every day or every couple days, as opposed to Metal Edge, you get it once a month, and you're like, here's your stories on black and white paper and a couple shiny pinups, and that's it. We could add and subtract, and it was also interactive, where, we didn't have this, the technology didn't exist like it does today, but we did have like the message board threads where people could make a comment or talk about something, and then everyone else could say something back, and you could, quote against somebody else's comment, or the chat room where people could literally in real time, and it was limited though, like 6 or 12 people could be in one chat room at a time and all talk together, and then we had to add a second one, and it was interesting, but yeah, it definitely kept the fire burning, and I believe that we, meaning Metal Sludge, have flown that flag for a long time, and we were doing it when a lot of people wouldn't touch it,
I'm on metalsludge.tv at the moment, and the lead article, which is, right now, the biggest thing in rock and roll is the Guns N' Roses reunion. I mean, the fact that this is real is still very... however you want to phrase or look at it, what a reunion, that word means, is still crazy that it's happening. And there's still breaking news, it seems like every other week, something crazy that's happening. Of course, Axl and Tuff were interviewed on Brazilian TV, and we played a couple clips from that before we brought you on. And then Izzy, who just I guess, discovered the internet, unlike you, he just got on Twitter like maybe a few months ago, and I think is like his 4th tweet ever, in response to why he's not with Axl and Tuff in response to the interview.
Right.
Your lead article says, "Oh snap, Izzy on GNR reunion bullshit. They don't want to split the loot equally." So I want to get your insight onto what do you think is going down, because Ian and I have discussed the contrast between what we thought about this reunion, where we feel, or at least perception is, that they seem to all be friends again, as opposed to Dokken, where they've literally said it's just for the money. So I want to get your perspective on what's going on.
I mean, I think for starters, I think the fact that Guns N' Roses reunited is great. I mean, it's humongous for them, and anybody related is, it's a good thing. I mean, even the crew people that get to go, around the world for the next 2 or 3 years at that level, it's a great job, I'm sure, for them. Axl, Slash, and Tuff obviously are the 3 main pieces, and they will collectively make the most money, obviously, without any question. As far as Izzy, I don't really know much about that other than what I've read, and Izzy was somebody that kind of left. God, he left 25 years ago. I mean, it's literally 25 years ago in 1991 when they first put out their Use Your Illusion records. That was, those guys were massive at that point. I mean, Metallica was opening up for them. And from what I could see, or what I kind of knew then, or my perception was that Izzy didn't give a shit at that point. They all had already been millionaires or made a lot of money, and maybe it was just I don't want to be involved with this, whatever it was, he stepped away from it when they were literally at their height. And so then, obviously, over the years, the band, fractured into a few different lineups over the years, and even once Slash and Duff had kind of left, Izzy came back a couple times and jammed with Axl and the Guns N' Roses lineup, probably even in the last 10 years on a couple of occasions.
Oh, yeah, in England at O2, yeah.
Yeah, or like he'd just show up in some random city or country and get up and play 2 or 3 songs with them, and then nobody would hear from him again for a year, So, when he says they didn't want to split the money equally, I mean, it's not my band, it's not my business, but I really honestly believe that they don't need to split the money equally. I really don't think so. I mean, I think Axl is without a doubt the superior alpha dog in that camp, and he has been, I think that adding Slash is a huge element, and Duff, I think, is the glue. I think Duff is the real brain go-between that kind of, I think, helped smooth over whatever was existing between Axl and Slash. I think Duff was very integral in making that happen.
I agree. You and I were kind of debating this, Brando, like the whole splitting the money thing. You know what it reminds me of, Stevie, is did you read Peter Criss's book by any chance?
I didn't.
Okay, because Peter Criss's whole thing, from Kiss, of course, was that when they were going to play Japan after the whole, reunion, when they put the makeup back on, he was like, why am I not getting paid as much as you, Paul Stanley and Gene? And they're like, dude, we're just going to do these shows without you, and we'll put Eric Singer in the makeup if you don't want to do it. And he was like, the fans won't accept it. And Paul Stanley was like, yeah, they'll accept it. And that's what they did. The fans accepted it. They went out and played sold-out shows in Japan. And I don't know if you disagree with it, because I'm kind of on your side, Stevie. Like, I would love to see Izzy there. I'm a huge fan of the original lineup. That's the band that I fell in love with, just like everybody else. But, it's still capitalism, and it's still about going out there and playing sold-out shows, and they're going to play these sold-out shows whether Izzy's there or not, and that's kind of the truth.
I understand that and agree with it, and maybe it's just my fairy tale mindset a little bit, because obviously if you're a Fringe fan, if you're the sorority girl that knows Paradise City and Sweet Child of Mine, you know who Axl Rose is, you know who Slash is, you might know what Duff looks like. I mean, I think he really helped rebrand himself in Velvet Revolver, but Izzy, you would think, as a childhood friend of Axl, and you who have been in bands, and who helped to write the songs. The fans may not, because he's the rhythm guitarist, and he seems to be friends with still Slash and Duff, because he also played with Velvet Revolver. Why wouldn't behind the scenes, when they're all millionaires anyway, just split it equally? It's not like it's Gilby Clarke. It's not like it's Bumblefoot.
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
That doesn't work. And I'll give you another band to compare it to. And you've heard this said a million times. This is the music business, okay? It's not just music. It's a business. And I'm going to sidebar it right now, and I'm going to bring up Poison. Okay, so Poison, what is the first thing you think of when you think of Poison?
Bret Michaels.
Bret Michaels, exactly. Bret Michaels, when Poison stopped, when they went on one of their breaks, he started doing tours as Bret Michaels and playing in little tiny clubs in Upper Michigan, in a club that I played in, that, max capacity 500 people. And I'm being generous. And he probably did those shows for a few thousand, $2,000, $3,000, maybe $3,500 off nights. And I've had my differences with Bret over the years, or vice versa, and people have said that, things about me related to him, but he's worked his ass off. And he played those shitty shows on off night in D markets. When I say D markets, we're talking not even Marquette, Michigan, but like, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and places that are not even a B or C list city on the touring market. And he's played those shows. He's played them in the winter. He's played them in the rain. And at all those shows, he stood there and signed autographs for every fat chick, every douchey 40-year-old guy that's, balding and works a factory job. And so Bret did that, and I say that because it's true. Now, I'm not dissing fat people.
No, I get it, dude.
Bret Michaels has continued to throw himself out there, and when it came time to do this corny show, whatever it was called, the idea like Rock of Love, you're going to go on this cable network TV show with 20 girls, they're all going to try to get you. Like, I mean, he kind of threw himself in the mix, and it was kind of, at first it was looked at as stupid and silly, but it launched him, and little by little, he's continued to build his brand. He's continued to work hard, and to this day, he can still go out and play, and now he makes 10 times the money he made on solo shows 10 years ago. And at the end of the day, the guys in Poison are upset that Bret's doing all this and haven't done a lot of shows. I'm not saying this because they've told me this, but it's kind of known at this point. There's been very few Poison dates. But some of these guys are my friends, but CC DeVille's not on Twitter that I know of. Bobby Doll's not on Twitter. They don't have Facebook pages. They don't have Instagrams. They don't go out and do a lot of public, if any public appearances. I mean, I challenge either one of you to Google CC DeVille and Bobby Doll and find any interviews or any public appearances or anything they've done with their related branding or the band in the last 5 years. And if you can come up with more than 5, I'd be shocked.
It is true. You know what? I know exactly what you're getting at, too, because Izzy, they've talked about, has put out, all these, solo projects that are available exclusively for iTunes. Like, right. He has, a dozen solo CDs or something? Mm-hmm. I didn't see marketing for any of them. So it's like he could be working on all this music, but there's just no one looking for an Izzy album because he's not out there. As you said, and you're speaking Brando's language right now because you have to be active on social networking, which is something that Brando tries to embed in my head every 2 seconds. Yeah. And you're right.
Yeah, that's basically it.
When it comes time to a Poison show, and this is the inside that I've heard from some people, and I won't say who the people are, but at the end of the day, for Poison to get back together, it's not going to be an even split. It's not going to be a 4-way split. It might have been a 4-way split 15 years ago, or 12 years ago, or 20 years ago, but in modern day, all the work that Bret's done in the last 4, 7, 9, 11 years, he's continued to make that brand vibrant or go or grow and be viable. And so for them to suddenly go out and do a Poison show and they're like going to get $150,000 a night and X amount of dollars per date over the course of 40 dates and a summer tour through Live Nation, it's about numbers. Bret is worth 10 times, 25 times, 100 times what the other 3 members are combined. Absolutely.
I get it, yeah.
And it's no disrespect to them, but the same goes for Axl. Axl's been out there. Slash has been out there. Duff's been out there. Duff's did, solo bands. He's played the Viper Room. I mean, the Viper Room doesn't even hold 300 people. Slash has played the Roxy, which is a small club. And both of them have been on bigger events as well, but Duff's written books and Slash has put out solo records and guested with people and done a lot of endorsement-related things. Those guys have worked their ass off to keep out there. Even Steven Adler has worked his ass off at times when he was keeping himself together and doing the tribute or the Adler's Appetite. And at the end of the day, Izzy's almost been non-existent. So if there's going to be a Guns N' Roses tour, I don't believe it should be split 5 ways. And as far as how Motley does it, I don't think a Motley splits there either because some of those guys have been fired or Tommy quit and. Nicky's continued to drive the brand. When it came time that Elektra let them out of the contract, it was Nicky that got involved and, formed the Motley Records with his management and lawyers and, books and TV, radio shows and clothing lines. And this is what makes those brands grow. So, a guy like Tommy Lee, again, he's a major part of Motley Crue. And to anybody who's a drummer, they grew up wanting to twirl their sticks because of him. But he's also the guy that was like, fuck this, and fuck that's gay. I want to do my rap stuff. Yo, motherfucker, what's up? He completely stepped so far away from it, and it's like now if they're going to throw a fucking kettle of money at the name Motley Crue, Nicky's probably like, there's no way he's getting an even cut.
Well, especially Mick Mars. Like, at least Tommy Lee was relevant. Even, you could even say having the sex tape out was relevant. The whole Pamela Lee thing was relevant.
Right.
But what was Mick Mars doing that whole time? I mean, he has a disease, so there's a reason for it. But, he's not active the way the other guys are. And Vince Neil's sort of still on the road, but
he's absolutely been in Motley Crue the entire time. He's never like left the band or quit the band or got fired from the band, and anything related to Motley Crue, he was there. But he's also, like you said, he was an older guy when the band came out. You know, so it's like that was really never totally Mick's forte, so to speak. You know, but I know that Mick's an active guy that goes to NAMM and the endorsements, and he's related to that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. But at the end of the day, you know, like you said, one of you guys said about the fairy tale dream.
Yeah.
The 5 guys in the Welcome to the Jungle video getting up and it just being them 5 and going up and doing those tour, that will never happen. Because Guns N' Roses at that point was just a dirty little rock band. You know, and those Use Your Illusion albums took them to a whole nother level.
It's just weird. I don't know why you say it'll never happen, because the thing is, I think part of the reason they were able to sell out stadiums, in some cases 2 nights in a row, was because of the mystique of this whole thing. And when they do it again, maybe next year in the States, they're going to need to have something new happening, you know, something that gets people excited to want to pay that, you know, upwards of $200-something to get a good seat. And if it's the original 5 guys, I mean, I think there'd be a huge market for it. The money would be there, man.
Well, there's still going to be a huge market. They only played 22 cities. There's 50 states in America.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, probably 4 cities in California and 4 in Texas and, you know, 2 or 3 in Pennsylvania and a couple in Florida. I mean, there's literally 100 options for them to go to. And I'll bet that they will go and do another stadium tour, but it's not going to be in those same cities. Like, it'll probably be in another 15 different cities, and maybe they'll repeat a couple of the big markets, you know, New York, Chicago, LA, Dallas, or Atlanta. But, you know,
you've given me a lot.
And doing those couple songs, I think it was well thought out that Steven would come in and play a few songs on a couple of, you know, shows out of the blue, unannounced, and make everybody perk up a little bit more. Whether that happens with Izzy or not, I don't know, but based on that couple things that Axl said, which I guess everyone can assume instigated Izzy to react the way he did and say, bullshit, they didn't want to split the loot, you know? I don't believe that I don't believe it's going to affect it either way, you know? You know,
you've given me a lot to think about, and especially with the analogy, because I'm also a big Poison fan, and just the way, and I kind of get it, and I hate that I get it now, so because you kind of flipped me the other way, that Axl's been out there rebuilding this band from the inside out, and Slash has been, ever since Slash's Snake Pit, has been doing a ton of things, and Duff has been doing a ton of things, and they've been working, yes, Izzy with his solo stuff, but he hasn't been putting it out there. He's kind of just been like the starving musician, and I guess if you go up there, it's like, hey, you know, I'm sorry, but we earned, because we kept the brand going. We're here. I mean, we want you to be a part of this.
You know, you take chances. Axl took chances, putting out that Chinese Democracy, re-recording it 5 times, changing the guitarist from, you know, Buckethead to Bumblefoot to DJ Ashba. I mean, that, you know, that's putting himself out there. And there has to be something said for that as a risk, you know. And like I said about Duff, you know, he's played with his projects and played, you know, opening slots or side stages on big venues or big events. And
doing media.
Yeah.
I guess it's like in sports. I you know, like you said, it's or as I said, it's the fairy tale. Like you don't want your favorite player to hit free agency and go somewhere else. Just take the hometown discount. Stay here. We love you here. You know. So I mean, yeah, I get it, because it is a business. Sports is a business. Music is a business. So thanks, Stevie, for killing my dream. I mean, I guess it could happen, because, I mean, look at the fact that we never thought, not in his lifetime, you know, name of the tour, that Axl and Slash would never get back together again, that it could happen. But now from where I was like, why can't you just split it evenly? Now I understand why. So thanks for destroying my dream.
My analogy that I just threw out there for the Poison or the Guns N' Roses thing, that doesn't hold. The same thing isn't held truthful from my end as far as the rat thing goes. I don't agree with the rat process that's happened in any way, shape, or form, for the record.
We should get into that because I heard the whole interview on Eddie Trunk. If you want to give some background for there's probably a lot of listeners who don't know the whole situation, but basically Bobby Blotzer is touring. The drummer is touring with a whole new band as Rat. And in the Eddie Trunk interview, he was like, I don't read that metal shit website, obviously referring to you quite a few times during the interview.
Right.
How did that make you feel?
How did it make me feel that he called us metal shit?
Yeah.
I was elated. I honestly thought about changing the cover of the site and having my friend, the webmaster who works with me, to just basically write the word shit over the word sludge and
embrace it.
Header.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
So, hey, he says he doesn't read it, but I know he does. Because otherwise he wouldn't know all the things that were said, which he... but hey, I get it that Bobby wants to work. I get it that he wants to make money. I get it that he wants to go tour and all that. However, what he did, from my thought, this is my opinion, from what I saw or what I heard and parts of what I know, he basically stole the band. I mean, he basically hijacked the band, and, the other guys at one point, and there's, three of them, obviously, Warren, and Steven, and Juan, there was some shows that they did a few years ago, but there was also things that were still trying to be, I guess, resolved within their camp. And at one point, just like with Poison right now, I mean, Bret's doing shows, and I think Ricky Rocket's been pretty verbal, the most vocal out of anyone else, to say, we want to go out and play. Bret's not agreeing to the tour. Well, that's kind of what's happening with Rat. Rat wasn't agreeing, I guess, collectively on what they should or shouldn't do. And at one point, Blotzer just got fed up and was sick of waiting around, and obviously started his tribute project first, which a lot of people really liked. And I saw it. I saw the videos. I heard it. I thought it was a great representation of the songs by his project, Bobby Blotzer's Rat Experience. But he literally did that for a few months, and then at one point just decided, hey, you know what, tonight at the Whiskey, which is, almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, or was it I think it was a year ago, we're just going to basically put the Rat banners up. We're Rat, and that's what they... what they did, and started going forward just as Rat. And that's when, obviously, Warren filed the lawsuit. And, I think all that is still going to be yet to be determined, kind of like what Great White was with Jack at one point, and obviously the Queensryche split with Jeff Tate. So sure. I think at one point they'll have their day in court, and it'll be settled and sorted. And in the meantime, I don't think Bobby is doing himself any favors by going about it the way he did, because half his band is... three of the band, the existing three members, are not happy with him at all.
Yeah, but I don't think he gives a shit. I mean, it's just, it's money. There's a lot of people who don't read sites like Metal Sludge that don't know they're not seeing the real Rat.
I don't know how you, without the lead singer, though, which is the face and the brand, I guess I don't know how you don't know that.
I'm a huge fan, too. And the thing is, Bobby Blotzer didn't write any of the songs that mattered. But to be completely fair, and as you were saying about the tribute band having no problem when it was Bobby Blotzer's Rat Experience, the band sounds kick-ass. I'm going to be completely honest. I see the videos on YouTube, and on some level, they actually sound better than, I think, the Stephen Pearcy-fronted Rat a few years back. And I hate to say that because that's the classic lineup. These are the guys who wrote the songs. But he did put together a really terrific band. Nonetheless, they're not Rat.
It's the same thing in a couple ways. We've compared it with Stevie, that Guns N' Roses, when it was just Axl, he put together a great band, but I think they put out the number, $117 million they made on this tour. The new version of Guns is never close to that.
No.
And what Bobby Blotzer is doing is essentially, what if Matt Sorum toured as Guns N' Roses and had to put together a great band? I mean, that's not Guns N' Roses, so it's just a lot of different angles you can look at this.
Well, Matt Sorum wasn't the original Guns N' Roses drummer, where Bobby Blotzer was,
Oh, I meant Adler. I meant like if Steven Adler. Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and here's the thing. I think Josh Allen sings great. I mean, that kid can sing those songs awesome. But here's the thing. You know, Paul Stanley has been struggling with his voice for several years, and he's probably, what is Paul, somewhere in his early to mid-60s?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. There's Kiss tribute bands all across this world, and probably one in each state that has a great Paul Stanley tribute singer that can sing his ass off and hit the notes. But the reality is, the true Kiss fans, does anybody want to see a guy from a tribute band sing for Kiss?
No.
Fuck no. Does anybody want to pay for a meet and greet to meet some guy named, Joe Johnson who's in Paul Stanley's clothes and costume? No, they don't, And to anybody that says, well, why would they pay to meet Eric Singer or Tommy Thayer? Well, here's the thing. You got the two key guys, and they were the two key guys, a long time ago. The singer and Paul and Gene. And well, they're technically co-lead singers. I mean, that's one band that's had Paul sang more of the songs, but Gene's equally sang several of the songs on the band and sings or on their some of their big songs, and he also is co-lead on a lot of them. But when Kiss brought in a couple of guys, they brought in guys that had a history as well. Eric Singer played with Alice Cooper. Eric Singer was in Badlands with Jakey Lee and Ray Gillen. Eric Singer was a professional, astute drummer that had credentials to his name, And he also was brought in because there wasn't an option. Eric Carr was sick with cancer and sadly died soon after. So they had to bring him in. Even Tommy Thayer. Tommy Thayer had put out, multiple records with Black and Blue, was signed to Geffen Records. And he obviously was working, for anyone that doesn't know, he was working with Kiss for a long time. Obviously, Gene produced some of those Black and Blue records, and he was part of the Kiss camp and at one point became involved with Gene and Paul in many ways. So many ways, the capacity to just suddenly bring Tommy in and have him be ace worked, and even in like other bands, people have tried to equate the Rat thing, what Bobby Blotzer is doing, to what Frankie Banali of Quiet Riot is doing. Nothing the same.
Okay.
It's not close. Now, for anybody that doesn't know all the history, for starters, Frankie is the classic years lineup drummer. There was a drummer before him with, Randy Rhoads and Kevin when they had their first Japanese deal and put out a record or two in Japan. But the first major release in the United States with Metal Health and all that, that's Frankie Banali. So he was there from the beginning with Kevin. The bass player that played on that record is Chuck Wright. Now, he wasn't in the videos or didn't tour. That was Rudy Sarzo. But Chuck Wright is the guy that played on that record and was involved with Quiet Riot very early on. He's now back in the band, and he's been involved along the way. So he's, another classic key piece. Alex Grassi, the guitarist that plays in Quiet Riot, is clearly not an original guy. He was still in fucking probably grade school when they did the record. But Alex also played in the band now for, a decade, 12 years. And he was in the band for many years while Kevin was still alive. And then here's the other thing. Replacing Kevin, who at one point passed away, Frankie didn't do anything for several years. He just went into hid. He, raised his daughter. He kind of mourned. And so he put it all on hold. He didn't do anything for several years. And when he did decide to go forward, and this is documented, he went to Kevin DuBro's mother and he asked for her permission. He said, I kind of want to do the band again. What do you think? I don't want to do it unless you give me your blessing.
I like that.
And I'm paraphrasing here, but I was told this, and by Frankie himself, that she said, Frankie, had you passed away and not Kevin, Kevin would be playing right now and singing his songs for people.
Wow.
Now, I ask you to do the same. Go play, let somebody else sing Kevin's songs, and let the band live on. So the fact that happened, that's one huge part. Here's the second part. Kevin and Frankie, even though they were in a band for many years and had a couple of ups and downs, Those two were like frick and motherfucking frack. They were a pair. They were a duo. They loved each other. They were friends. I know this because I also knew them. I'd see them in airports, walking next to each other with, a coffee, going to their next flight, and we'd say hello to each other. So those guys were really, really friends. They looked at this, later part of their life to still be involved together and doing this. We're out there, buddy. We're going to go make it happen. And so Bobby Blotzer doesn't have that relationship with Stephen Pearcy that I know of. I'm pretty sure of that. He didn't have a great relationship. He didn't ask the others' permission.
No.
Stephen didn't die, and then he decided to go on by himself. And even, comparing other apples and oranges, Warrant brought in Robert Mason. Obviously, they couldn't continue without having Janie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's the guy, and also Janie Lane's the guy who wrote all the songs. That whole thing is kind of crazy too.
And they brought in Robert Mason, who also was a pro in his own right. The guy had been involved in other projects, like the second Lynch Mob record, and he's a known guy. And even Quiet Riot now has had Jizzy for the last couple of years. Jizzy had his own heyday with Love Hate, putting out major label releases, and then at one point even touring with LA Guns or Rat. So a lot of these guys that did bring in guys, they brought in guys that were really respected or had some kind of a quote-unquote resume, if you will. And I think a lot of people frowned, and this is no disrespect to Josh from Sin City Sinners or the other guys, but at one point, Bobby Blotzer just took a tribute band from Las Vegas and said, "You guys are going to be Rat. We're going to be Rat. I'm going to be the drummer, and you guys are now Rat." And nobody, to my knowledge, had any real credentials beyond being, a tribute band. And
Sure.
We're talking about a band that would play anything from Billy Idol, White Wedding to, "Oh Come On Eileen" by the Dexys Midnight Runners. And
They're a good band, though. Yeah.
Well, and that's where the
Dexies?
No, Sin City Sinners.
Okay. No, I hear it.
That's where people, I think, were a little upset, disgruntled, and I say that from an industry standpoint and comrades within the industry and even fans, like, hey, if you got Doug Aldrich, it'd be like, okay, you got another killer pro player, but he didn't,
Sure.
And he's continued to, and here's the thing, the writing's on the wall. Bobby's had, 4 or 5 guitarists, 3 or 4 bassists, clearly there's some trouble within the camp. There's been some stuff that's went on that's made it look a little silly at times, and that's kind of my thought on that, in relating it to a lot of other similar projects.
Yeah, and which you could read all about at Metal Sludge, because I know you've been heavily, reporting on this, if you want to put it that way, or commenting on it. Right. I want to bring it back to Guns N' Roses, one thing, because I got to have a really in-depth conversation with you on the phone, a while back when we were talking about just what the site has done and what you've done. And I know that you got to talk to Steven Adler at the height of his drug days, and you have some pretty interesting stories that I'd love to hear.
Yep. Well, we did some interviews with Steven years ago, 10 years ago, and it's funny that I have some of those interviews that we did, and they're actually audio as well. Dee Schneider, David Coverdale, Steven Adler, and at one point I thought, hey, I should put these out, because when we did interviews back then, we would often record them, but then we would just kind of translate and put the majority of it on, on the Metal Sludge site. But now with podcasts being such a big thing and having audio, I thought it might be a good idea at one point. So those are in the archives here, some real good stuff. And
what's some of the crazy stuff you have from Steven Adler, though? Do you have an exclusive for Appetite for Distortion?
Well, the people can read that. It's been talked about on the internet before that, he talked about his drug use and maybe even some crazy late night stuff that happened in regards to that. And I'm not going to quote it right now because I don't know exactly what I can't I don't want to paraphrase it. So, and and Steven's a friend, and I love him, and I think the band's doing great, and I'm stoked for him. But if all of that's going to come out, it's going to be on a Sludge podcast. So everybody can hear his words.
I get it. Yeah.
And David Coverdale's words, and Dee Schneider's words, and many others.
Awesome, man. Dude, this has been a total honor. I actually have one more question that's unrelated, and it's funny. A lot of the fans of the show have been breaking my balls about mentioning Dokken every episode, but I love Dokken. And this episode, we mentioned like every hairband on the planet, so why not?
And Ian's going to South Dakota.
Well, that's what I was going to ask Stevie, because when I was texting him to come on the show, I know you're a huge Dokken fan. You talk about them as being an early influence of yours. So I'm wondering, man, why aren't you taking the trip to South Dakota? I mean, it's one last time.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I would never go there for that. I mean, I like Dokken, absolutely. Jeff's a friend of mine. George is a friend. George played a solo on the Tuff "What Comes Around Goes Around Again" record back just 4 or 5 years ago, and I saw them on the Tooth and Nail tour. Became a fan. I think those first 2-3 records are awesome. Don's a cool guy. I mean, I've met him a few times. We've actually opened up for him, I believe. He absolutely can be a dick, and probably was a dick at times, and probably can still be, which we all can be. But, at the end of the day, Don's no joke. He, I would put him in legend status. I mean, he's been around a long time. That dude's been around 40 years doing this. And, he calls them like he sees it, and he's not afraid to mince his words, And as far as them guys doing the reunion in Japan, I think that's great for Japan. I know they're doing the one or two shows, whatever it is, up in South Dakota at that.
Just one show, man.
Just one.
Yeah.
And he's talked about all the offers coming in, which I think the offers will continue to come in, and just like Gnr or other things, they're just somebody's gonna put another zero, and at one point I think they're gonna end up doing it, whether it's Sweden Rock or Download or Rock in Rio, or at one point I think there's a possibility those will happen, but
you're waiting for that before you go to the beautiful land of South Dakota. You don't want to go there. Just...
Yeah, I'm
no
really
disrespect to South Dakota, but that's a destination wedding right there.
Yeah, I'm not really a concert goer, I just...
Oh, no?
I'm not, I mean, this is a business for me. I play my shows. I go when I have to play, and I'm there to perform and sell merchandise and meet people and all that, but,
Wait, so saying that, man, that makes me wonder, were you at any of the Gnr shows?
Nope.
That's crazy to me, man. Like, this is your life, dude. Like, I would have thought, you've been reporting on the idea of a Guns N' Roses reunion for probably the past 15 years or so, and it happens and you didn't go? Like, that's crazy to me, dude.
No, and I had probably 5 opportunities. I mean, obviously, if I would have somehow had 2 tickets in my hand to guarantee I could have got into the Troubadour, I would have went to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have went to Dodger Stadium, but it's funny. I'll rewind to what you just said. This is your life, dude. You don't know me at all. This is not my life. You don't know me at all. This is so not my life. I am not, and a lot of people that meet me, I am not your cliche rock guy. I mean, aside from the fact that I just shaved what's left of my hair off my head, I don't have any tattoos. I don't have a motorcycle. I've never had a motorcycle. I've never been drunk in my life.
Good for you.
50 years old. I've never, no exaggeration, Never, I've never been drunk one time in my entire life.
So are you a nerd? Like, how would you, if we had to have to classify Stevie Rachelle, like, what are you?
Definitely not a nerd.
All right, well, I'm a nerd, whatever.
Never smoked.
Okay.
Never smoked.
Peyote? Ton of peyote, though, right?
Did I what?
A ton of peyote, though, obviously.
I was going to say, did you say peyote? I can't even believe you know what that is if you're only 30 or 33. That's kind of like an old person term. But
I'm an old soul.
I have 2 kids. I pick them up from school 4 or sometimes 5 days a week. I take them to karate. I take them to after-school activities. I live in the Valley. I could probably count on my one hand how many times I've actually even been in the city of Los Angeles or Hollywood in the last year. You know? Oddly, I did go, I was just talking about this to somebody the other day. I did go to Motley Crue's show on New Year's Eve.
Okay.
And it was Shout at the Devil in March of '84 that altered my life. Like, I went to that concert and I came out and it was a whole new thing. Like, I was obsessed with Motley Crue. So then I saw the Theater of Pain tour, I saw the Girls tour, I saw the Dr. Feelgood tour. I was, obsessed with Motley Crue for the 80s, so to speak. But at one point, I outgrew them, or outgrew a lot of it. I had not seen them since. And so knowing it was the last show, it was in Los Angeles. It was New Year's Eve. It might even have been was it a Friday night? But I literally bought the tickets from StubHub at 2:30 in the afternoon that day. I contacted my buddy, and what happened is some other friends went to a couple of the other shows the previous night or 2 nights before, and all these people were paying these outrageous amount of money, and then people were like, I bought my ticket at 6:30 online, and it was only $39, And I was like, really? There's still some tickets left, and they're only $20-$30. So I went online on New Year's Eve during the day, and I was finding tickets for $32.99 or $34.99.
I saw that
surcharge
too.
of $5. So I was like, it's only $40. I'll pay $40 for that. And so I asked my buddy, I'll give him a shout out, Izzy Presley.
Fellow podcaster.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love Izzy. And I called him up and I said, dude, what are you doing tonight? He's like, dude, I'm going to probably be Uber driving. I said, do you want to take a break? He goes, why? What's up? And he was actually crying, and I say that lightly. He was bitching on Facebook 2 nights earlier, fuck, everybody's at Motley Crue but me. This fucking sucks, So I messaged him. I said, dude, you want to go to Motley Crue tonight? He's like, dude, I got to work. I'm broke. And I'm like, dude, it's on me. So he's like, really? And I said, yeah. I said, but you know what? I don't want to pick you up. I don't want you to pick me up. I ain't going out. I'll meet you in the parking garage. We'll walk in. We'll watch the show, and we're done. I'm driving home, and you can go Uber. He's like, dude, I'm there. So I bought us 2 tickets, and me and Izzy went. We watched the show. It was fucking great. And then I went home, and he went and Ubered. So that was the last concert I was at, other than the shows I played this year, and probably the first concert I'd been at in quite a while.
Then let me ask then, if you're not going to shows, is there anything what's in your playlist right now? What are you listening to? What are you raising your kids with? Are they rocker kids?
Not at all.
Not at all. Well, they listen to.
They don't like it. They're not into that at all. My daughter loves Taylor Swift.
Okay.
And his mom actually took her to Taylor Swift a couple of years ago. It was her first concert. She loved it. She has a Taylor Swift CD.
Okay.
Every time we get in the truck, she wants to listen to that. So I'm stoked that she likes it.
Cool.
But
what are you listening to? Now, are you listening to old stuff, or are you just it's just
well, it's funny.
Podcasts? What are you listening to?
I do. You know who I really like is Pat from Train.
Okay. They just put out a Zeppelin cover record, right?
Yeah, and his.
Do you know? Have you ever listened to his podcast?
I have listened to his podcast. He hasn't done one in a while, but he I like the fact that he was bringing on a lot of these obscure 80s hair bands, one of the guys from Danger and stuff like that. I listened to that one. It was great. And I know that you repost some of that stuff. I think I discovered him through you, to be honest.
And here's the thing. Pat is he's an amazing singer and an amazing lyricist, but he also is a fucking son of a bitch. He fucking busts people's balls. He talks about Richard Marx taking a shit in his studio. It's just, he's fucking kind of Howard Sternish.
Okay.
The first couple times I listened to him, I'm like, this guy rules,
Wow.
So I like Pat from Train, Pat Cast, he calls it.
Okay.
I love Joe Rogan. I'm a big UFC guy. I love the UFC. As far as music, I'll post stuff on Sludge. Just in the last couple of days, I posted, Cranking Now at Metal Sludge headquarters is Sleaze Bees, Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed, or something like that. So I'll put that on, and package some orders and listen to Sleaze Beast. But, I mean, when you guys called me, I was listening to 999.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with them, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not either. What podcast is that? Or band is that?
It's not a podcast.
Or band is that? I don't know.
Band. It's a punk band from England.
Well, I know the Rancid song. I dial that if I really want the truth.
What is? They have a song called 999.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's I wouldn't doubt it's probably a tribute to 999, the band. The band 999 was formed in 1976 in England, and they were part of the original punk scene with the Clash, the Sex Pistols.
Oh wow! I probably like them then. Buzzcocks, like that.
Generation X with Billy Idol.
Sure.
It's very early punk kind of stuff.
I'm gonna check them out. I love that scene. I like that sound a lot. So all right,
that's cool, man.
You taught me something.
So wrapping this up, as you were saying that you're a UFC guy, I'm wondering now if you're watching the fight, which will have happened by the time this goes up.
Absolutely.
But
I don't miss any of them.
So being that we're recording this prior to the fight, what do you think is going to happen to CM Punk?
You know what? I'm a fight fan, and with all respect, I don't consider the WWE anywhere near the UFC.
I agree.
Even though I realize that those guys are athletes, Chris Jericho, Brock Lesnar, and whoever else is popular in the WWE, those guys are no joke. They could take out the majority of everybody in a fucking given bar they were standing by. But so I don't know a lot about him, but he was kind of like a WWE or a WWF superstar who at one point retired. Am I right?
Yeah, he kind of went off script and was just talking a lot of shit, and I don't know, he just kind of bailed and or got fired depending upon who you asked.
Right, and so then he said, I want to try this UFC thing, and everybody said, dude, you're not fit, you're not, you might be a badass, you might be strong, but one of these guys is going to kill you, right?
Yeah, he's not even that big of a dude. Like he's not a Lesnar, he's not an Undertaker,
well,
he's just not.
That doesn't really mean...
I know in the UFC it's different, I know. You don't have to be Dave Bautista.
Weight classes are obviously, they're very strict on that, but I did Google a little bit about it, and the guy that he was fighting that I saw from a couple weeks ago was not, with all respect, is no like UFC superstar, not even close. He's kind of, I would call him like, Peter McNeely or something. And I say that lightly. He's a tomato can. He's probably, if anything, it's a hand-picked guy that CM Punk probably has a good chance against. But the guy that he's fighting is only like, I don't know, 1-1 or 2-1.
I think he's 2-0 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and he's got like 1 or 2 fights in like Cage Warriors or Strike Force, and then he's got like 1 or 2 fights maybe in the UFC.
Yeah,
so
one in the UFC.
Like he's not no real motherfucking deal, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't really know anything about the CM Punk guy. I just heard his name. Obviously, the publicity they've been pushing with the making of a CM Punk into a UFC star or whatever. Obviously, that's gotten a lot of hype. So
who's your pick then?
I would say it's a toss-up. I don't really know anything about either one of them.
All right, man. Dude, this has been a kick-ass interview. And you know what? I'll say this, man. When you say this isn't my life, like, dude, I get it. Well, I mean, Brando and myself working in radio, we do a lot of different stuff. But it just is funny to me because I feel like it's fair to say it's an element of your life. And Metal Sludge is a big element of your life. So it is funny to me to hear you say, I don't go to shows. But I get it. I know you're a guy who likes working out. I know you're a diehard Packer fan. And like, I appreciate all that you do for the site and all the stuff. And I really hope that it continues to grow, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, because like today, I'm going to work online. I'm going to send my mail order. I'm doing laundry. I actually just cleaned the lint out of the fucking dryer. While I'm outside.
You're a good dad.
Buzz. Tonight, I'm going to watch UFC all night. Tomorrow I'm going to watch NFL all day, and unless, Nikki Sixx gets in a car accident and is on life support, I won't even touch Metal Sludge until Monday.
Okay.
So,
Understandable, man. Understandable. I get it. So once again, for you guys, if you want to follow Stevie on Twitter, it's at Stevie Tuff, Tuff, as in the band, of course. And Metal Sludge is on Twitter at Metal Sludge. And anything else that you're promoting, man? Any shows? It's funny, you do these shows like sporadically, so that kind of makes me wonder what you do every day outside of it, because it's like Tuff is not a full-time thing. And I'm just wondering if there's any other stuff you're promoting.
I'll play, maybe 30 shows a year, or give or take, with a handful of projects. Like we did some tough stuff in the spring, you know, like a little Vegas, Fresno, and then Hollywood. We played the Rainbow Bar and Grill parking lot party, which was a fun, you know, weekend. And then we just did the 80s in the Park in Florida a couple weeks ago. With like Striper and Quiet Riot and Ted Poley, Danger. And now next weekend we'll do the Hair Nation Live, which is out here at Irvine Meadows, will be a great thing. We did the Cat House Live last year.
Yeah, and SiriusXM is sponsoring this, which is really cool. That's where I work.
Right. Hair Nation Live, and Eddie Trunk's going to be the host, and some other related guys from that. And they're all obviously good people that support the brands. And then on October 1st, we get on the Monsters of Rock cruise West Coast, Monsterwood, and this will be our second cruise. We did one on the East Coast a few years ago, and all those people related to the Monsters of Rock cruise are fucking badass. I mean, Harlan, who's the CEO of Monsters of Rock, and Larry Moran's kind of like the tour TM VIP guy that coordinates a lot of it. We're excited for that. There's like, I don't know, fucking 40 bands, excuse my French. You know, and it'll be
now you fun. Say that? You've been cursing all show. Now, excuse my French. Okay.
Right. So, you know, excited for that. And then at the end of October, we go to do Rock and Skull, which we've done we've done it in the past. It's in Joliet, Illinois at the Tree this year, which is just around kind of the Chicago area. So we're going to do a couple of warm-up shows in Ohio, and then we're at Rock and Skull on Saturday, October 29th. Which is, that's the weekend that Piercy's going to play with his quote-unquote rodent to guest, which it's being advertised that Juan's going to be there, Carlos Cavazzo, and Greg D'Angelo as the drummer.
That's big.
And there's been some rumor that Warren DeMartini could possibly be involved, but at this
so
point,
that's a rat.
Still strictly, yeah, that's the real rat. So Rock and Skull's a great time. And then... in November, I actually have a run with my Cheesehead band.
Cheeseheads with Attitude. Do you want to plug them?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a seasonal thing. So every season, we usually do a couple of different weekends of Cheesehead shows, you know, in and around Wisconsin, close to Green Bay and the related cities for... during a home game.
Yeah, Brando's shaking his head a little bit at what Cheeseheads with Attitude is.
Do you like sing songs about Brett Favre? Like, I don't like what's going on.
Google it after we get off. We put out 6 records.
100% will.
Dozens of songs on iTunes. We have dozens of audio and actual MTV-style videos on YouTube. We basically take popular songs like Weird Al Yankovic and make parodies. So, like, the most recent hit, if you want to call it that, we had was a few years back. We did Packer Face, which is a parody of Poker Face by Lady Gaga.
That's so cool. Oh, I love it.
It's badass.
I'm absolutely going to Google it.
Cheeseheads a few times a year, and then in December we're going to play a few shows in Ohio, Cleveland, and Cincinnati at the Kenny Oz Fest on December 3rd, and then the following weekend we're going to play Oklahoma City on Friday, December 9th with Pretty Boy Floyd, and then on December 10th, we're going to play the Hair Metal Holiday in Dallas, Texas with Slaughter, Kicks, King's X, Lynch Mob, Bullet Boys, Tuff, Pretty Boy Floyd, Lillian Axe, and a couple others.
That's awesome. A good lineup.
Yeah, really, seriously.
Yeah, so basically between now and the end of the year, we have a couple of things a month, and most of them are just kind of weekend runs, get away, have some fun, you know?
I mean, Stevie, this has just been awesome. I mean, you taking the time, and we hope that maybe you'll come on again because we want to just talk more about because like hair metal, like whether Guns N' Roses is a hair metal band and what Alice in Chains used to be. But we'd be here all day, and I know you have a lot of lint to get to.
Yeah, well, it's all good. I appreciate the shout out. Send me your stuff. Tweet it to me, at Stevie Tuff and at Metal Sludge, and I'll share it. And hopefully some people will get off on hearing some of my babble related to.
Hey, you're an inspiration. I mean, because you started this website before the internet was really, this internet thing was really big, and we're just getting into the game in 2016. So we're definitely taking a page out of your book, so to speak, of just telling it like it is and about the bands that we love and then criticizing ourselves at the same time. So in the vein of Stevie Rachelle, that's what we're trying to do here. So again, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you guys. Very appreciated.
Appreciate it, man.
Talk soon, buddy.
Okay. Be well, man.
Wow, we could have spoken to Stevie for hours, but I know he's got kids to feed and do all those things.
Yeah.
So, what an awesome dude.
I knew he had a lot of stories because I've loved the site for a while, but the first time I heard Stevie interviewed was on Earl Skakel's podcast, Inappropriate Earl, who's been involved in the roast battles and all that and does a great job. But he had so many stories with Earl, which was kind of why I was like, this guy would be perfect. And I thought he did an awesome job.
And I like how my first question was about the dick chart. I just, again, I loved how he painted the scene of the early days of the internet. And I'm using dial-up to find out how big rock stars' dicks were. I wasn't getting hard. Relax. I don't know. Maybe I was insecure and curious. I think
everybody was curious, though. I mean, it was a big part of the site. He had no problem.
And there weren't sites like Perez Hilton and TMZ and real like sex tapes back then. So
you talking about this reminds me though, on Earl Skakel's podcast, he asked about the same thing, and he was talking about it, that he remembered some of the comments, and one that stood out to him was that there was a member of Quiet Riot on the penis chart, and the comment was like, "There's no riot going on in his pants." The shocking thing to me, actually, like there was. I happen to know a lot about him and the site, and hopefully a lot of other people now, are more familiar because of the interview. But I was honestly kind of shocked that he was like, I don't go to shows anymore. I wasn't even at the Guns N' Roses show. I'm like, really, dude? Like, you know more about this band than I do. I
was too, and I would have been more shocked if I didn't hear that interview recently, which is funny how he mentioned that. With Axl and Tuff on Brazilian TV, that the interviewer asked the same question, and Axl had said that he doesn't really go to shows. Even, how he's a big sports guy, apparently, that's why sometimes he was late watching like NBA games or whatever, and Ninja Turtles too, apparently, that he'd rather watch sports at home for all the close-ups. And so that's weird. I mean, if Axl Rose, you think that's his life. I
get it for him, though. I will say, like, he's been consistently on the road for years. There was a small break in between old GNR to what we call new GNR, Axl and Friends, whatever you want to call it. But for the most part, he's been consistently on the road since the mid-'80s. I think the last thing you want to do when you're, relaxing on your downtime is go to another show. I kind of get that.
You know what though is weird? I don't know if you do this, especially since you're not a sports person. Is that
I like the Mets, but we were playing awesome, by the way.
But not a sports radio person.
No, not at all. Definitely not a sports radio person.
Yeah, no, and I am, and I will watch sports radio on TV. I'm a big fan of Boomer Carton here in New York and the Michael Kay show
and seeing how many Diet Cokes that or Diet Pepsis Mike Francesa.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his. He's too mean to his listeners. I don't find whatever.
I loved when he fell asleep on the air.
I mean, it's brilliant. And he works hard, so maybe that's why he fell asleep, but that's just like, he denies it.
Do you remember all the listeners breaking his balls for like weeks following that? Hilarious.
It's funny that our morning show, I say our station I work for, WBAB here on Long Island.
Views and opinions.
Yeah, no, right. Our producer, Bret, he does a great Francesa impersonation. And actually, he pretended to be Francesa talking about Tebow joining the Mets and how God's going to be a third base coach or whatever. That's on the WBAB app if you want to check out that clip.
Nice.
My program director will be happy with that plug. But speaking of plugs, that's a weird thing out of context. I have to listen to this because because I'm a massive Lady Gaga fan. She came out with a new song. He mentioned the Cheeseheads, the CWA, Cheeseheads with Attitude, his cover band, Poker Face. So I brought it up on YouTube. Can I play a little bit of it?
Yeah, and the one thing I will say, pretty impressive number of views on it.
Yeah, it's got almost 300,000. And it's mainly like thumbs up. It's not like
the late 80s, early 90s.
I mean, because that's all they got in Green Bay are the Packers. And I believe even the fans have a stake, a stock in it's like a publicly funded team. Like I think they own part of the Packers, which is kind of badass. So
it's fun because I get the appeal too of doing this because just like we're a fan of Guns N' Roses and we want to do something with that.
Well, you see a lot of these sports parodies out there.
Yeah.
So I mean, but the fact that you have somebody who is a professional musician, I know he doesn't do it as much as he used to, doing this, I think that's kind of cool.
But I'm saying it's a side project of something he's a fan of that he's actually been able to like make a little bit of money with too, from what I hear.
Which is what we're aiming for, just not musically.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's actually got to be kind of cool as him being a guy in California who probably, you know, is looking to find fellow cheeseheads in the state that want to watch Packer games. And I'm sure that there's a community there. Actually, I have a friend in Queens who's a huge Packer fan, and like they get together and go to games in New York. So
yeah, no,
there's all these communities like that.
Yeah, the Packers are one of those teams that you'll have fans all across. So I think that's what it's good when you talk to these people who do, you know, as we discussed, you know, he's more than just the magazine, and he's more than just the guy from Tuff. He does all these things. And same thing for us. We've talked about, you know, the Ninja Turtles and mental disorders. Why those are the first two things that come to my head or whatever. and I think that's why we like dissecting this band. And we mentioned that probably in the first episode, why we identify with Axl and the music. It's not just what's on the surface. It's all the layers underneath. So
yeah, I mean, and the music has gotten through us through so many times. I mean,
sure.
we kind of mention that every now and again, but I mean, if I'm going through a tough time in my life, put on Estranged, and that song always speaks to me.
Yeah, no, I perfectly understand that and agree with it, and then that's why we're doing a Guns N' Roses podcast.
Yeah,
and I think that's why I may see Axl DC next week, because he's kind of with that voice and knowing that he. And it's funny, his agent, Fernando, he kind of, it's so funny, now he's taken on the Axl personality and lashing out. I don't know if you read the interview that he just put out to AC/DC fans that are still not cool with this idea, just saying that they need to get over it and stop being selfish. And he's doing Brian is sick and he wanted to leave. And I like how he phrased it. Axl is filling in for his hero. So I like the fact, and if you have a chance, and it's on our Twitter and our Facebook, the interview that Axl and Duff did on Brazilian TV. When Axl, will play the clip right now about the future of Axl DC, the smile on Duff's face, you know, when he's talking about it, that they're all just digging that he's doing this. So as now that's the immediate future for Axl Rose, of course we know the future of Guns N' Roses, well, sort of the future for Guns N' Roses, meaning just the tours. We don't know everything that's going to happen.
Sure.
With Izzy and Steven, but we already talked about that stuff. So when asked about the future of AC/DC, here's what Axl had to say.
As long as Angus wants to do it, and as long as, and we can make it work. Guns is really supportive about it, and it's a bit
radical.
It's
pretty
radical.
I love it.
Is that Duff saying
my
that?
job.
Yeah.
I love that it's my job. I love that Angus is my boss, and it's, singing the early Brian songs, the first couple albums with Brian. It's like those are something else to sing. So it's physically a different animal and another kind of work, and I take pride in doing it, but it's a hard thing. So then after, in its own way. So after this, then there's a few days, and then I'll do another 10 shows with AC/DC. And after that, it's kind of whatever Angus wants to do.
All right.
I like the jingling that keeps happening.
Yeah.
When did Axl turn into Madonna with all like the bracelets and like the little lace glove? Like when did that become his thing?
Yeah, I remember I said to you, and I already know like the people who get offended by anything we might say, demeaning, but I don't mean this in a bad way, but I said like Axl's hands remind me of Liberace when you see like him playing the piano. And after I said that, I started YouTubing some Liberace, and Axl's hands are actually way more over the top. Like he's got way more rings and bracelets going on. And some would say he looks like a pimp. That too, of course. It's a totally different look than 80s Axl.
I know. I'm just wondering where the inspiration for that came from, but I guess that's another topic for another day.
Having a lot of money, you could afford a lot of cool jewelry,
I believe there are topic discussions on Axl's wardrobe on my GNR. Like it's even got, so it's not just us thinking that. I think that's unique that it's. Axel's wardrobe has always been a point of conversation, but just the amount of rings, it's just like, whoa! Like, do you go to sleep with that? Do you have a certain amount that you wake up? Like, do you have a jewelry box? I mean, there's so many questions.
Every interview he does, you do hear it sounds
jingling.
like he's jingling. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I have to imagine. I mean, does that take time out of his day in the morning? Like, it's just. I want to know. Inquiring minds must know.
And you already know that there's some sound guy who wants to tell him to tone it down or something, but they don't want to piss him off.
I know. I can't imagine that sound guy. The boom mic is like, stop shaking your hands. What if he was Italian, talking with his hands moving around? That'd be crazy. But this has been an awesome interview, an episode that we've done. A lot discussed, a lot has happened. Lord knows what's going to happen in between now and our next episode, which, as we say, we'll figure out when it happens. We appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten and the interactions on Twitter and Facebook and. The iTunes reviews, please keep it. We're flattered. The fact that we're getting 5 stars and it's just like, wow.
Yeah, leave us an iTunes review, I'd say, is the biggest thing. Of course, follow us on Twitter, at The AFD Show, on Facebook, at The AFD Show, Appetite for Distortion with Brando and Scotto.
iHeartRadio app as well.
The iTunes reviews, though, are huge because I'd like to break into that top 150, whatever it is, because then new people could check it out and be like, all right, I like this, and the brand continues to grow. And
I think that will give us more legitimacy to get bigger guests because, as we mentioned, Bobby Blotzer in the show, and whatever, he rejected us.
Yeah.
Who was he? I didn't even know who he was.
He was the drummer
Bobby Blotzer.
For a band that headlined arenas for
I don't know
years.
who the fuck he was before this. So the fact that he rejected us, he could suck my bows. So I don't know. Maybe I'll start a feud with him. I don't care. If we get up there in iTunes rankings, maybe we'll have more legitimacy that we can get other washed up drummers. I'm sorry, I was so mad off with the breaking fourth wall as we always do. I sent Ian, fuck Bobby Blotzer in an email. How dare he reject us? I mean, who knows? Maybe he just didn't want to talk about Guns N' Roses.
At least he gave us a response. I thought that was cool.
All right, fair enough.
We didn't get a response yet from Gilby or who else did I reach out to? Or
Tracy Guns.
I don't think I reached out to Tracy yet. Gilby. Or Matt Sorum. Matt Sorum I reached out to.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Yeah, we tried Melissa Reese, but obviously she's super busy.
It is what it is. We'll get good people on, but to me, Stevie was, top 5 people I wanted to get on, honestly, and we did it. So.
We're still in our infancy of this podcast, so any questions, comments, concerns, please let us know. And as far as the next episode is concerned, in the words of Axl Rose to Kurt Loder concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon's the word, but you'll see it.
You've been listening to the distorted minds of Brando and Scotto, dissecting all things Guns N' Roses on Appetite for Distortion. Follow the guys on Twitter at The AFD Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/The AFD Show.
Security, I'm going home.